In the last 200 years, detectives have come to rely more and more on forensic evidence. Today, with modern scientific tools in hand, this investigation would be handled quite differently. A scientific method would be employed using observing, inferring, predicting, and modeling. Based on this information, scientists would develop a hypothesis about who the criminal was. Toms left a slew of clues that modern forensic experts could use to link into the crime. Even if John Toms had burned the song sheet and made efforts to disguise other clues, experts would still have plenty to go on. First, they would secure the crime scene to protect any evidence. They would also take photos of the entire scene. Then, forensic investigators would take the temperature of the victim to determine the time of death. This data would help scientists form a hypothesis about the identity of the criminal.
Body temperature 18 degrees C.
Detectives would systematically comb through the crime scene for other clues, collecting other data. A footprint that Toms left in his escape would be cast in plaster, which would show that Toms's boot matched perfectly, down to a chip on the heel. Continuing to collect data to support or refute the hypothesis, the forensic team would examine the body for hair or other evidence. They would look under fingernails for bits of fiber. Collected with adhesive tape, the fibers would be taken to the lab for analysis.
Can you remove your coat and put it in the bag?
The team would gather clothing from the suspect to compare to fibers found at the crime scene. The fibers in Toms's vest make a perfect match. Blood on the victim's hand would lead detectives to believe that they would also find the victim's blood on the suspect. Toms's blood-stained shirt would be collected and analyzed. In the lab, scientists would use DNA analysis to test the blood on the shirt and compare it to the victim's. Because each person has a unique DNA code, the results of this kind of test are generally conclusive. The blood on Toms's shirt would definitively match his victim's. The gunpowder Toms used would also provide clues. It leaves a residue on the hands and face of the shooter. Samples from the victim's wound and swabs from Toms's face would be analyzed in a crime lab. Using a technique called chromatography, which separates chemicals in the gunpowder, samples would show that there is a perfect match. Forensic scientists would now form a conclusion based on the data collected. The mountain of evidence would conclusively pinpoint Toms as the culprit. Despite Toms's best efforts to disguise the clues, modern forensic science could detect traces of evidence beyond what is visible to the naked eye. Today, using tools that were unimaginable 2 centuries ago, scientific proof would convict Toms, beyond a shadow of a doubt. How much more evidence would modern investigators have about Toms than investigators from 200 years ago?